I'm Tim Marshall. Welcome to R&B Showcase, the show that takes you over, under, and through the decades with the best in classic contemporary sounds. We have a special guest right now. She is an original member, a co-founder of a legendary R&B soul and pop group that gave us such great definitive Soul Train era hits on the Hot Wax record label. I'm talking about Billboard #1 songs such as One Ad's Stick Up, Highway Robbery, and one of my favorite songs is The Day I Found Myself. Please welcome singer, actress, and recording artist from the vocal trio The Honeycomb, Miss Shelly Clark, to the R&B Showcase.
Yeah. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. How you doing? How you doing? Now, she says good morning. Now, she's on the West Coast with us here today.
That's it.
And so we appreciate you taking out the time out of your busy schedule for being part of the R&B Showcase television show and our radio show. My co-host joining us here today is Julian Seward. Julian, say hello to Shelly.
How are you doing, man? Pleasure.
Hey, Julian.
Now, Julian's also a radio host on 106.5 FM out of Philadelphia. Tell us about your show, Julian.
Yeah, so my show is called My Bittersweet Philosophy, and the best way to put it is kind of a piece of my personality placed to a playlist.
And we also have another young man who's been my co-host for about a year or two on the R&B Showcase radio show, but he has his own show called The Crossover on 106.5 FM in Philadelphia. Kevin White's joining us here. Kevin.
Hey, Tim. Good to see you, man.
Good to have you with us here.
Absolutely.
And, and then Kyle Maack, of course, is our producer here today. Kyle is always part of the show here. We appreciate Kyle. He's also on the radio with us, and we definitely appreciate you taking the time out of your day, Shelly, for being with us. This is one of my favorite groups growing up. I remember watching you ladies on Soul Train, and you talk about In Vogue and groups like that, but you were the original Funky Divas with your soulful sound. I mean, you just were bringing it with One Ads and Stick Up, and I love, like I said, I love that song, The Day I Found Myself. That was one of my favorites.
Wow.
But take us back a little bit. Now you're on the West Coast now, but where are you originally from, Shelly?
I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York.
All right.
And I started out singing and dancing at 6 and 7 years old. My parents realized, oh my God, this girl's got talent. We can make some money. And so they put me on stage at a very young age, and they added my brother to the act. And before long, we were booked on Broadway. We had a record deal with Columbia Records. I was traveling with Cab Calloway. You know, we were performing with legends when we were kids, but my father trained us and managed us and taught us dance and song just like we were adults. So we were being booked. We were the youngest kids to perform at the Apollo Theater and the Palace. And we weren't no amateur night stuff. We were a regular act. 1 week, 3 shows a day, 4 on the weekends. And we were dancing like they do now on Dancing with the Stars, except we were 6, 7, and 8. So you can imagine what that must have looked like to people. They were in disbelief, and they told, rumors started that we were not children. We were like little people. I don't know if you remember back in the day, the Hines kids. Do you remember Hines?
Mm-hmm.
Hines and Dad?
Hines and Dad, yeah.
Well, they were just the Hines kids once, and we ended up at auditions together usually. But my father was so gangster that even though they were good, we edged them out of auditions because we could sing. And every time it called for something, my father would flip the script and change the game up. We went to audition for The House of Flowers, and the producers told my dad, well, out of, like hundreds of kids auditioning, they said, well, we like your kids the best, but this role calls for 2 boys, because we were actually supposed to be small children taking care of the prostitutes in the House of Flowers. They were ladies of the night, and each flower had a name. Each girl had a name: Violet, Rose, Daisy. And so my father said, what? You want 2 boys? So he took me in the bathroom. He shaved off all my hair. He brought me back to the producers, and he said, boom, there's your 2 boys. And they said, oh my God, you're hired.
Oh my goodness, that's quite a story.
Now you can't beat gangster like that. He was trying to get paid, okay?
He made sure you got out there, didn't he?
One of the few black men of the day that was promoting and producing on that level.
Mhm.
So, as time went on, I, was singing and here and there, and we moved out to LA, and I started singing here and there, and I got noticed by Ike and Tina Turner's talent scout, Ann Kane, who was married to original and last founding member, standing member of the Temptations, Otis Williams.
Oh, Otis, yes.
So Ann Kane Williams was married to Otis, working for Ike, and she came to my house and she auditioned me, and she said, "Well, you'll do just fine as an Ikeette." And I said, "Oh, great. So when do I go?" And she said, "You're going out tomorrow." So what? What? So when I got out there and I started working with Tina, I realized first I had to fight off Ike, but after that, I started working with Tina.
Tell us about the honeycomb. Now, you had that sound. You talked about Edna Wright, very powerful lead singer you had. Tell us a little bit about working with Edna
wow,
as your lead singer.
Well, it was so strange. The way I got into Honeycomb was, actually, it was Edna's sister. I don't know if you know Darlene Love.
Yeah, Darlene.
Is Edna's big sister was doing a show that was signed to do a show she couldn't do. So she tosses it to Edna. Edna calls in Carolyn Willis and says, "We need a third girl. Should we get Clyde King? Should we get Julia Waters? Who should we get?" And Carolyn said, "No, I'm already working with a girl named Shelly Clark." So I go to the studio and I meet Edna for the first time, and we're getting ready to, sign to perform for it. Was the Andy Williams TV special featuring Burt Bacharach and Dionne Warwick. And so we sang, little did I know then at that time that Edna told Edward Holland, "I'm not signing with you guys as a solo artist. I want to be in a group. If you like this group that you see on TV with Andy Williams, call me and I'll get them to sign, in a group with me." So he watched, he called her the next day and he said, "They're fantastic. Come to Detroit." I really didn't want to sign with Honeycomb in the very beginning because I was fearful that we would not have control over our lives. But I bit the bullet for the other girls because they were just hounding me to death. Come, and this was in the, originally, come sign. And I started traveling in Europe. They had to come chase me down. I think now it's called stalking, but back in the day, they wouldn't leave me alone. So I said, "Okay, you know what? I'll take one meeting with Holland Dozier Holland, and I'm gonna make it so hard for them that they won't sign me." So I went in there and asking for big money. "I want an advance on this and that. And I want this and a wardrobe and this and that." Those fools said okay to everything.
They know who they wanted,
Man, I'm stuck.
You are part of many firsts that I do want to kind of talk about along the way, but one is regarding something that we talk about all the time, which is one of the most important institutions, in American culture, which is Soul Train. And Honeycomb was actually the first act to ever perform on Soul Train. Like, in hindsight, what does that feel like?
You're absolutely right. And that's strange that you should bring it up because in the back of my head, I kept saying, "Don't forget to say you're the first act on Soul Train."
I got you.
You got me. You got me. You know what? I'm going to tell you the truth. At the time, we were unsure because, bear in mind, this was a brand new TV show that Don Cornelius was getting out there. A lot of times you don't realize the importance of being on because it was a first. And here is a show that is unproven. And so you're just hoping that enough people see you, that you get the airplay. And then as time went on, we started seeing that, oh my God, this show is known for around the world. It's an iconic show. People would watch it every week and look at the fashion and study the dances and look at the entertainers. And Don, he was a piece of work unto himself, and he came to me the first day because, like I said, we were a little bit outrageous. And he came to me on that show and he said, "And so, what are you wearing? I can't let you wear that on national television." And I said, "What? It's just a dress that's cut down to the navel. So what?" And he said, "This is daytime TV. Wear some, change clothes." And I said, "I didn't bring anything else." So this is it. So they let us do the show. I noticed they didn't I didn't get too many close-ups because they were afraid that it would have a backlash. But I got enough close-ups, and I said, well, they weren't that afraid because they showed the entire outfit. It's the kind of dress I could wear today because Honeycomb was known for fashion. We were ahead of our time in a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I saw that you were a background vocalist on a lot of really popular pop songs.
Yeah.
Two that stuck out to me just for personal reasons were you were on Tommy Rose Dizzy and MacArthur Park.
Listen, the one that stands out for me is MacArthur Park because in a way, seeing that it was Jimmy Webb,
yes,
I did know the magnitude of what I was getting into. And I don't even know how they found me. But of course, if you were singing sessions back in the day, your name went before you, and certain producers called this one, called that one. You know, some were union, some were non-union. Of course, you like non-union because you just get paid right there. And no paper filling out and all that stuff, forms. And so they brought me in. And if you notice, they said, we only need you for 10 minutes. We wanted someone who could hit the high C at the very end of the song. So, of course, Richard Harris was the original vocalist on that. And who knew? He's an actor. Who knew he could sing? But he did a very, very great, decent job. And then the only thing that I remember, well, I hit the high C. They paid me thousands, and I left. But years later, I decided I was curious because I wanted to see why these lyrics were so very different. And someone left a cake out in the rain, and old men playing chess in the park, and I'll never have that recipe,
Yeah.
And so I found out that Jimmy Webb was having a love affair with a girl who worked in the area. And every day at noon, she would come to the park to meet him. And these are all lyrics of the things that he saw that went on. And to his dismay, they didn't work out, and he had to witness her getting married to someone else in that park. And it happened to be raining. So someone left the cake out in the rain. It started raining on the wedding cake. And these lyrics were just, so outrageous and so clever and so strange. But in essence, I was happy and that's why we added MacArthur Park in our show. We do it in almost every show. And so we do a different version of it, 3-part harmony.
So who was responsible for your harmonies that Honeycomb had?
Well, in the very beginning, Honeycomb was harmonizing right here in LA. And that's why we had the blend before we got to Edward Holland. And the girl that's not talked about much, who has retired, she's still alive, but she retired, is Carolyn Willis.
Okay.
And Carolyn Willis went on to write and create for Seals and Croft and a lot of other groups because she had that ear. I think she arranged all of Bill Withers' background. This was, I believe, post Honeycomb. And so she had that ear. I think she was the best soprano in the industry at the time. Usually one surfaces, right? And they come with all this talent. So I would like to credit Carolyn Willis for helping us find that sound and that blend. And then it just came natural. And then of course, with the new group that I created in 2014. John Paris is married to my honeycomb angel, Kathy Merrick. But my husband reminded me when I said, I got to put a brand new honeycomb together. I don't know, where do I start? And then Verdine said, well, that John Paris is married to Kathy Merrick and she's on tour with the Supremes. They were called the Sounds of the Supremes. Okay. And they toured globally. And so I said, oh, wow, that's right. So I gave Verdine a birthday party and it was at Mr. Chow in Malibu and made sure to invite John and Kathy. And I sat Kathy next to me so I could talk to her about helping me recreate a new, moving the legacy forward. And she said that she'd be happy to, that she was sort of not tired, but coming down on the experiences of, she was also in Shades of Lace. I don't know if you remember that group. They sort of were sanctioned by James Brown. And so anyway, she said, fine. I said, okay, but here's the catch. You got to find me a third girl. So she said, well, it just so happened that I sing off and on with a girl named Wendy Smith Brunet, who actually was the first Black female to tour with the Glenn Miller Orchestra, all white orchestra. And she had that gig for many, many years. It was phenomenal because, nobody was doing that back then. So I got two great girls. Wendy went on to get an NAACP for her work in the industry. Kathy was so pretty. She was she won and was crowned Miss DC, where she's from. Awesome. And she's a gorgeous girl. And, both of them are gorgeous. So I really lucked up, but it started with a prayer to God, to be honest.
Now about your soulful and funky choreography. I mean, you're very different from the Motown era choreography for Honeycomb. Tell us about how that came about for your group. Well,
okay, our first choreographer was the very famous Charlie Atkins, who choreographed for the Pips and all the Motown acts. If you were on Motown, you had to see Charlie at some point in your career, even if it was only that you were moving well or standing up straight, good posture. You had to go through Charlie. So when Edward Holland left, then they all, transitioned. They went back and got Charlie, and they said, Charlie, work with these girls, the Honeycomb. And so he did, and he had us he called us his female Pips. So that's where it started. But along the line, Charlie was sort of like a drummer. So he had most of his acts moving to the underlying drum beat. And that's how he got his steps in choreography. Along the line somewhere, I said, you know what? They're great steps, but we need to start moving a little sexier, like young girls would. So I sort of flipped the choreography around. What you saw in the latter parts of Honeycomb was my choreography. And then with the new reimagined Honeycomb, we have a very, very talented guy that I found. He was a hip hop master. He taught a master class here in LA at 3rd Street Gym and 3rd Street Dance and a lot of dance studios around. And I walked in just blind one day and I said, I need a choreographer to work with a girls group, and I want him to be edgy. I want him to have patience. I want him to, give us hip moves, but not kill us. And they said, oh, you want Darian Henning. And so from the very beginning, I called Darian, and we've been together probably since 2014. And his moves, because he's from the Justin Bieber camp. So he gave us the girl type moves from Justin Bieber and the other acts that he was working with. And Darian, he's a quadruple threat. He's a graduate of the New York City Film Institute. He's a certified drone pilot. He is a videographer. I don't know if you've seen any of our videos, but they are all put together by Darian Henning. And he's a photographer. So if you've seen our latest video of Here Comes the Rain Again, our new song out, that's all Darian.
Yeah. That's your new single, right?
The filming and the editing.
You've done so much in music. I definitely want to touch on some of the other things that you did as well, like the Eddie Murphy years. I know you kind of went into managing, and I know that you worked with Shirley Mae Matthews, and she managed as well. I just want to know what your inspiration was to get into that realm. And then a couple questions I have about Eddie Murphy as far as the Rolls Royce situation, purchasing that for his for his manager at the time, and working with the Coming to America show.
Okay.
That didn't get off the ground.
Let me start with Shirley Mae Matthews.
Yeah.
This is a bad, okay? She is the reason that I got noticed for Honeycomb, because I was in a group with Shirley Mae Matthews. If you look at her bio, you'd be like, I mean, it's a scroll. I mean, she's worked probably with every major artist in the industry, if you know anything about her. And one day I was working at Shirley's house, and I said, Shirley, what's that? And she said, oh, it's called a computer. And I'm on the web. Computer web, girl, what is going on? She was so ahead of her time that, and I was in a group with her and Carolyn, and she called us Willis, Matthews, and Clark. Willis, Matthews, and Clark. And so we were singing all around town, being noticed. And of course, it was wonderful because Shirley is just a powerhouse unto herself. I'm not sure if she was with Motown or whatever company she was with in the very beginning, but if you Google her and YouTube her, you'll see she was probably one of the first Black artists on some of those shows, Hullabaloo, and some of those first early disco shows, and the videos are probably in black and white. But Shirley is cold-blooded, and so hats off and kudos to her because it's because of her that I'm in Honeycomb. If you just want to date back. Now, the other thing you asked me was Eddie Murphy, and I started out working only as a sort of assistant to, and there was like another department which was called Eddie Murphy Television, and I believe Paramount Pictures pacified Eddie and gave him this TV company, and so he needed some people to get it off the ground. Well, wouldn't you know it? I started out in a very low position, just being there. And then as time went by, they saw that I was capable of so many, many things. And so I just, kept rising and rising and finally got into casting. And Eddie's great because he's funny off the stage too. But I'm sure you've heard a lot of that. He's hilarious. But I believe that during one of his filming, he was really unsure about The Golden Child, and I think that was one of the movies that he was really hesitant about. And his manager Bob Wax said, "Listen, this is going to be a hit movie, I guarantee you." And he didn't believe it, and he said, "Well, if it's a hit movie, I'll buy you a brand new Rolls." And so it went unsaid, right? And nothing else happened for a long time. And then as it turned out, he had to make good on the promise. And so since I had a Rolls Royce at that time, they came to me and they said, "Shelly, we want to surprise Bob Wax with a brand new Rolls, a white Rolls. Can you make that happen?" So I called my dealer and they got it onto the lot rather, at Paramount Pictures without telling him. And they took him outside and surprised him. And the whole company was there with this brand new Rolls. But that was due to me. And that was Garth Waite Rolls Royce in Beverly Hills that he bought it from.
And that time also with you kind of working hand in hand with Tommy Davidson and, at the really beginning of his career.
Yes.
He also kind of confided you.
Oh, Tommy used to bounce up there to Paramount Pictures, and I knew that he was talented. I knew Eddie was scared to death of him in a way because he was an up and coming, younger artist that you don't want anybody trying to come in and take over, your realm of where you are. Yeah. So I had to work really hard to get them interested in Tommy, Eddie in particular. And so he was performing at the Comedy Store in Hollywood. And I said, "Eddie, come on, you gotta go see this guy. You'll love him." And so he not only took himself, he took the whole company. And so we went to see, and sure enough, Tommy killed it. And we've been brother and sister ever since. But I was also his drama and dialogue coach on it's not known, but he redid Coming to America, the TV series. And if you Google that, you will see that. You'll see one episode on the internet, which is Coming to America, the TV series pilot. And they aired it, I want to say July 4th. It was a terrible thing. I think that they never had any intention of standing behind it. And so even though it didn't work out for Tommy. I stayed his sort of go-to and assistant throughout the years. And then I had him on a podcast that I did. And Tommy told me that Want Ads was the first record he ever bought because he was told me where he lived, and these black girls had a record player. And he said, I used to go and play Want Ads every day. It was the record of my life. Mm-hmm. So we were always connected somehow.
And in turn, you were the first person that saw In Living Color, right? Mm-hmm. Did he bring that to you first?
Yes. Yeah. And he came up to the house one day because I would have to go over his lines with him for all the movies and TV shows that he was doing. So, I was his dialogue coach. And so he would come up to the house, and one day he came up and he gave me and Verdine a VHS. And he said, I'm working on a workshop with these people, and I don't know what's up with this, but, tell me what you think. And so we put this big old thing in the in the TV box or whatever that thing with the receiver. And we're watching the first very bare bones episodes of In Living Color. Didn't even have a deal yet. Yes. And so we thought it was hilarious. We were dying laughing. Tommy, this stuff is great. And he said, yeah, well, I don't know. We'll see what happens.
What advice can you give to those that are trying to get into the entertainment business today?
I would say learn every aspect of the business. We like the show part, but we don't too much get into the business part. So you write a song, and then what? You have to know how to have a publishing company and how to copyright and how to do other things. So, there is a book out called, I think, The Music Industry 101 by Don Passman, who used to be a lawyer of ours. He's a great, great guy, and he writes in easy terms. So I would say get his book. He's got 10 volumes now. It was that successful. Yeah. One led to the next, and I think we have all 10 of them because we like to stay up on stuff around here too.
I believe the book was called Everything You Need to Know About the Music Business.
That's it.
Yes.
There you go.
And
our son went to school with Don Passman's kids.
Yes.
So
awesome.
We know him ever since, from way back 1970, 1976.
Well, Kyle reads the book all the time. Kyle's a recording artist also.
Yeah. When I was
nice.
When I was with Otis Williams.
Yeah, when I was signed to Otis Williams independent recording label, my godfather, Bruce Williamson, who was a lead singer of the Temptations before I got signed, offered me that book. And so it's always, I understand what you're talking about, that it's always important to have a good knowledge of the business that you're trying to get into, not in just one avenue, but everything. Not only for interest's sake, but you can also protect yourself.
Shelly, we want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule and coming on the R&B Showcase television show and radio show with us. We really appreciate you. And how can folks get a hold of you? Do you have a website for your...
Okay. www.honeycomb.biz. And if you're looking to book us, the entire EPK is www.honeycomb.biz/EPK. And of course, on Facebook, we are the legendary Honeycomb on Facebook. We are official Honeycomb on Instagram. We are the Honeycomb on TikTok Reels, and we even have a MySpace page somewhere out there. We've been around that long.
Again, we thank you for being part of the show. I want to thank my co-host, Julian Seward.
Always a pleasure, Tim. And thank you so much, man. Pleasure.
Kevin White.
Good meeting you.
Our producer and host, Mr. Kyle Maack.
Hey, what's up, y'all?
Wait, Kyle Maack, the artist.
Yes, the artist. That's right. Yes. And we can't thank you enough for, like I said, taking out time, your busy schedule, being part of the show. And we wish you much continued success and keep on doing what you're doing because you're doing such a beautiful job. And thank you.
Thank you.
One more time for Shelly Clark.
We appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Tim Marshall, and thank you for joining us for R&B Showcase Live.